everyone, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to card 3 of my 2019 holiday card series. Today I'm going to be using Lawn Fawn's Winter Narwhal along with Very Happy Holidays and Making Frosty Friends. So I've stamped out the images that I'll be using on some Nina Solar White cardstock with Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. I'm starting with the Narwhal, and for him I'm using C0, C1, C3, and C5. So I'm going to begin with that C5 and lay in my shadows. So especially along the underside of his body, underside of his fins, and then also under his scarf where that would be casting a shadow, and then a little to both sides of his head just to kind of lift him off the page and give him that rounded appearance. Then I'm going to come in with the C3 and begin to blend that out. I'm using those darkest 3 shades on the body, so that C0 is going to be saved for his belly. So I'm just going to bring that C3 in a little bit and save some room for that C1 to be the highlight. And then once I have his body colored in, I'm going to use the C1 as the shadow on his belly. So I'm just going to start at the top right under that scarf and add a little bit of shadow there, and then I'll blend that out with the C0. Once he's had a few seconds to dry, I'm going to go back in with my C5 and C3 markers and just add a few little dots and details and just bring him a little bit more to life, give him some more personality. Now you do have to wait a little bit for that ink to dry. If you add it too quickly, it'll just blend into the rest of the ink since the paper is super saturated and you won't see it very well. So if you give it a little time to dry first, maybe 20 or 30 seconds, you'll be good to go. The next combo I'm using is B21, B23, and B26, and I'm going to color in the narwhal's horn with these shades. I just started up at the tip with the B26, and I'm blending toward the bottom with the lighter shades. And then I'm also going to use those same colors to color in all of the fish. And I'm just going to put the darkest color, that B26, on their tails, and then blend forward with the B23, and then use the B21 for their faces so the eyes stay nice and bright. I'm going back to my cool grays for the birds. I wasn't sure what direction I wanted to go in with them when I colored the narwhal, so I decided to just wait and think about it a little bit more. But my idea was to try to create or turn them into puffins, and the beaks aren't quite the right shape, but I decided to go with it anyway. So I'm using C3, C5, and C7, and I use the C7 along the backs of their bodies and then just blended forward with the C5 and then the C3. And then I'm going to use the C1 to just add a little bit of shading to the white places. And then I will soften up the edge of that with the colorless blender, and then I'll color the other bird exactly the same. For their beaks, I used YR07, and then I just can't let things go without any shading, so I did pull in the YR09 and just add a little bit of depth. I'm using BG10 and BG11 for my iceberg. I'm just pulling in some color from the outside edges with the BG11, and then I'm going to pull in a little bit of the BG10 to bring that towards the center, also to highlight those little marks that are drawn by the artist on top, and then just let that fade into white. For the narwhal's scarf, I'm going to use BV11, V15, and V17. Now the V15 and the V17 go very well together, and I have a real hard time finding a third shade that blends really well with these, like a lighter shade. So if you guys have any suggestions for what you would use with those two markers, I would love to hear them in the comments. I did pull in the BV11, but it wasn't really a perfect match as to like the tone. The BV11 is a little more cool toned, and then the V15 and V17 have a little bit more of a red tone. So I did have to go back and forth a couple of times to get a blend that I was happy with. And then I also did the puffin on the far right, his scarf with those same shades as well. Then for the little gift ribbon on the one fish and the other puffin scarf, I'm going to use my favorite red combo, which is R29, R39, and R59. These are the perfect shades to make a nice bright Christmas red. To finish off the coloring, I'm going to bring in RV11 and give every critter and fish some rosy cheeks. And then I will trim all of these out with the matching dies. For my background, I'm going to take some shaded lilac distress oxide ink, and I'm going to blend that onto a piece of Bristol smooth surface cardstock. Now the only part of this panel that's going to be showing is the top portion. So I am kind of rubbing off a little bit of the ink on the bottom part that will be covered up to create a kind of a hazy halo effect as I come out from the center. I want it to be a little bit darker in the center and then kind of have that glow to it on the edges. And it doesn't have to be perfect because then I'm going to tap a little ink onto my work surface and water that down and do some splatters just to create some more interest and detail in that background. I have really been loving this technique lately and just can't get enough of it. I'm also going to grab some Copic opaque white and splatter that on the background as well to create some snowfall. And then I'll set this panel aside to dry. Once it has fully dried, I'm going to pop it in my MISTI and take a couple of the snowflakes from the Very Happy Holidays stamp set, and I'm going to stamp those in a white pigment ink. I'm just using a color box ink that I've had forever because it's still nice and juicy and still works great. Now these will fade a little bit, so it will be more of a subtle look. If you wanted it to be darker, you could heat emboss them with white embossing powder, but I wanted the subtle look for today. I'm also going to pop in a piece of Moonstone cardstock and stamp out my sentiment in Moonstone ink. And I'm using the Have a Gnarly Holiday from the Winter Narwhal stamp set. And I stamped that down twice to make sure I got a nice bold impression. And then I'm going to grab my card base as well, which is also Moonstone cardstock. And I'm going to be stamping out a few more images and sentiments. And it is the two polar bears and the snowflakes once again, and the Everything is Cooler with You, and all of those are from the Very Happy Holidays. So now I'm ready to assemble my background. I've trimmed out the back piece with the outside in stitch rectangle stackables, and then a couple more pieces using the stitched simple wavy borders. So I've got two of the Moonstone and then one of the new pearlescent vellum. So I'm going to start adhering all of these together. I'm going to add some liquid glue to the back of the background panel and adhere that directly to my card base. And that's going to create a nice little border of that Moonstone cardstock showing through on the outside edge, which is going to tie everything together quite nicely. And then I'm going to take the largest of the Moonstone panels and I'll adhere that down to the background next, just making sure that it's nice and straight from the bottom edge. Smooth that into place. Then I'm going to take the pearlescent vellum and I'm going to glue the shortest piece with the sentiment right on top, and that will show me where I can add my adhesive so that it won't show through the vellum. So I'm going to put that right behind the sentiment banner, and then that will be the only place that that is adhered to the card. So my original idea was to have the fish behind the vellum panel, and so they would look like they're underwater. But with that pearlescent sheen on top of the vellum, I think it made it a little bit more opaque and you really couldn't see them well at all, especially with it being only adhered down at the bottom, so it's not really flush with the card. Even when I was pushing down, you couldn't see it very well. So I decided that I would change things up and add the fish over top. And I know it's not perfect, but you know, you want to be able to see those images that you spent all that time coloring. So this is just going to work better for the overall design. So once I was happy with the layout, I could begin adhering things down, starting with the narwhal. I'm going to attach him so that his tail overlaps the top edge of that vellum, which will just help it lay flat and not get caught, you know, as it's going in and out of an envelope. And I did put down an acrylic block just to really hold him down, especially since I didn't want the vellum to help him, you know, pop back up again. So then I'm going to begin to adhere the fish in sort of a semicircle beneath the narwhal. And I just love this one with the little gift wrap. I think it looks so cute. So I'll just add that tiny one. I had to decide which side I wanted him to go on, but I ended up going with the left. And then I'll put that acrylic block back in place to hold everything down. Then I have my two little puffins or Arctic birds, and I'm going to attach those sitting over on top of the iceberg. And at first I tucked their feet behind, but then I decided that looked a little weird. They needed to be standing on top of it since the iceberg is adrift. And so I just removed them. That's a great thing about using liquid glue, is you have that time to change your mind, and added them so that their feet are planted on the iceberg. So the card was looking a little plain to me as it was, so I decided to adhere some sparkling clear sequins. So I have both the 4 and 6 millimeter size, and I'm just using my pick-me-up tool and some Ranger Multimedia Matte to adhere those. My Ranger Multimedia Matte is a little bit cloggy. It's pretty old, so it takes a little while to get it out of the bottle, but it's still working, so I'm not going to replace it until it's not working anymore or it's empty, whichever comes first. So I just added the final little sequins, and then I'm going to grab some crystal stickles and I'm going to fill all the centers with that to kind of just help them be a little bit more sparkly, and also just to cover up the holes in the center of the sequins. And of course that wasn't quite enough glitter for me either, so I decided to add it to the narwhal's horn, because what's the use of a horn without some glitter on it? I also decided to add it to the scarves of all the critters and the gift bow on the one little fish over on the left. And I wanted to show you guys that I actually used the same card sketch as the last video. I just flipped it upside down, and then I used the narwhal and the cluster of fish to represent the circle, and the 3 arrows I took as 3 different elements and represented those with the iceberg and the 2 little puffins. So that's another way that you can use card sketches, is just to kind of flip them around and change them and interpret them in new ways. So there is a look at all the sparkle and shine, and another peek at the inside. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, you can hit that notification bell if you want to be sure that my videos always show up in your feed, and you can be the first to see each video as it is released during the holiday card series. If you'd like to see card number 3 from the previous 2 years of holiday card series, those are on screen right now, and you can click on either one of those. I hope you all have an absolutely amazing day. Bye-bye.